excited. Okay. Did we cover everything else before we kind of take this deep dive? I don't think it's be that much of a deep dive, but I want to talk about this. It's been bothering me.
Okay, start diving. I'm ready to hear.
All right, he's ready. So this all comes about because Penn State star safety KJ Winston is injured. To what extent, we don't necessarily know, and I think that's fair, but we'll get to that in a second. But it sounds like, as James Franklin put it, a long-term injury. Now, I am fascinated because there has been an evolution, and one of the things I like to pay attention to when we talk about on this blog, podcast, etc., is the evolution of James Franklin, the coach, and the way he talks about things. And I'm going to apologize a little bit because I'm going to break one of my own rules and take something out of a paywall and put it in a little bit more public of a domain, and that's this article from Greg Pickle, who did a great job on On3 of explaining how James Franklin's language around injuries has changed. He kind of tracked this and talked about this, and then I kind of get to the point. So 2014, we're not going to talk about injuries. It's not fair to the kids, etc. So then Greg goes on to cite Naeem Wortman-White's injury in 2015 as a press release that it was a season-ending injury. That was like one of the first real times we've ever seen James Franklin talk about injuries. Then in 2016, it was later in the bowl game, I believe, towards the end of the season, like in between the end of the season and the bowl game. And James Franklin releases this list of Andrew Nelson, Jan Johnson, Naeem Wortman-White, Brandon Polk, all of these guys that can't play. Kind of taking a deeper dive, kind of anteing up on that. And then in 2022, Franklin kind of got burnt by saying it was a season-ending injury because Zariah Fisher, James Franklin's like, he's done for the season, and then shows up playing in the season effectively. So I guess let me get to the point, and I want to see how you feel about this. And I actually want to ask this from a slightly different perspective. But my point is, I don't know where to stand as a fan on whether or not the head coach of my football team should tell me the injuries for the team, as a fan of the team. However, as a fan of the game and the increase in betting, not that I do that, but the increase in betting, the increase in whatever gamesmanship, the transparency that kind of comes with being informed, that would kind of similar to the NFL model, I would maybe appreciate the more, as college athletics gets to a bigger deal, like I would appreciate the Wednesday, this is this person's status. Thursday, this is this person's status. Friday, here's their game status, if they're going to play or not. I don't know. I've been really wrestling with it, but I do think it's weird that James Franklin's like, we're never going to talk about injuries, and now we're talking about injuries. So I do wonder what's changed there. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this whole situation?
I think it's what you just pointed to. I think what's changed is the expectation and the money on the games. I mean, it's not as overt as it is in the NFL, but they do have to have participation things on game days, right?
Right.
So I think this is just the first tiptoe toward that. And I also think there's another factor in this stuff, and maybe I'm overthinking it, but I don't. It's the players themselves in terms of brand and awareness and telling stories, right? Like share the information or have some input on it, or what do I want it to be out there? And then the other wild card is, can you share someone's medical information, right? Which sports teams have always kind of probably skirted the rules on in terms of disclosing information or whatever else. But I think just like we talked about a 10-game schedule, I think fans in the sport are closer to, in college football, a probable, whatever the words are, listing of players' participation 2 or 3 days before the game, then game day and all that. It's going to become more official in the next few years, I think. I think it'll just become standardized across the sport.
You kind of unlocked something that was said today that also kind of hit me. Do you think this is... here's what I actually think this is. I'm not going to ask this rhetorically. I think this is also James Franklin just being a head coach for now 10, 12 years plus, and being sick and tired of being asked by the media, hey, is this guy going to play or not? And I think this is maybe his way of figuring out, okay, I'm gonna state it this way, and this is how you're gonna get it from me, and we'll move on. He kind of put his foot down today when I think it was maybe Rich asked a question about injuries. He's like, I don't know. Talk to me on Monday or talk to me on Tuesday. I'll know how I'll have a
But he
better
doesn't have a
idea.
Tuesday immediate media availability. Oh, does he? He's the conference one.
Well, he has the practice one, I guess, or I guess
I
is
thought that was Wednesday afterward.
Yeah, it is Wednesday. Now that you say that, and I think that's what he was alluding to.
So I took a student to the news conference today.
Yeah.
Supposed to be a couple, only one kid showed up. And as we're walking out, I'm like, oh, would you, as we look at this from a PR standpoint, would you? He's like, I don't understand why someone would waste this question on injuries when they know he's not going to answer them. I'm like, I think that's interesting. And I think 99.5% of the time, he's probably not. But the guy's got to ask, sort of, just in case like something has changed. Or he does say, hey, it's because Franklin said that before. Hey, I don't know why you guys are doing this because I'm not going to tell you. But then he slips it in someplace else. Like, who knows if he doesn't pop off Thursday during the radio show, right? And somebody will ask something and he's like, well, there it is. And
he did it. He did it today. He did it with the AJ Harris thing then, because he was like, AJ Harris was battling a stomach flu, and that's not an injury, and it's in the past. And I think the difference between maybe a stomach flu and an injury is like you get over that pretty quickly usually, and you're pretty much fine. It's not like it's gonna linger once it's gone. But I just thought that was interesting. Like, I don't know. I didn't love the way he admonished that, because I think it's a fair question to ask, because I think that's Rich or whoever. I think it was Rich doing his job, and I think that was a thought that, like, it looked like a pretty serious injury to Cam Wallace, and I think it was a fair question to ask. It's interesting. It felt like he set more of a guideline today of ask me on the Wednesdays. I'll have a better idea.
Maybe, and I think that answer, like, what I don't like about the answer. I mean, you can say this is how I treat it. This is my standard answer, but I never like the I know, I know kind of thing. Answer. Just don't dance around the answer. Then, hey, I haven't had a chance to talk to him. Probably not going to be able to tell you much. Don't do the I know you have to ask, but I'm not going to. Just don't even answer the question. Just give a non-answer, right? Give an honest non-answer, and that just seems like even less confusing.
I think maybe, and I think that was kind of stemming from his mood. He was in not like a good mood, but he wasn't in a bad mood. I wonder if the Antonio Branch thing had anything to do with that. Here's what I want to know. I'm going to ask Steve to put his dad cap on. If your son or daughter was injured playing college athletics, would you want the media to know?
I think I think as a parent, you probably don't want competitive advantage. You don't want people knowing what's wrong with your kid. So, right, there's another factor, right? That's another audience he's working with, is to not give that answer out to keep them happy.
So you would not want that?
Probably not, right? Okay. Like, it's obvious somebody's hurt. I don't need the specifics of what's out there. It's like hockey, lower body injury, right?
Well,
okay, pick a spot.
Okay, and I think maybe that's where I was just curious on that, but I think that would be beneficial for fans. It's like lower body injury long term, upper body injury short term. And
as much models and benchmarking as this, I'm sure they can find a way, and I'm sure they've talked about it, because at least if they haven't, I'd be shocked. When he talks about we've done all these things with every level of the program, I'm sure there's somebody he's emulating or trying to find his own way after taking some benchmarking from on this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just thought that was a good find by Greg. I just was curious. I don't know. Because it's the one repeating thing that keeps popping up, but it's also changed a lot, as Greg kind of put it out in this article. Yeah, I don't know. I just thought that I was curious to hear Steve's take, so I think that was good.